Bang. All right, so what I was about to talk about was basically functions. And my big deal, the thing that was important to me to talk about, is that you can usually find them online. We're dealing with Oracle functions in this case, because we're just going to talk about SingleRow. And you typically, in the SingleRow world, every relational database has its own version of these things. So Teradata will have its own version, SQL Server will have its own version, and Oracle's got its own version. Some of the functions do translate into W3 schools, and I'll try to make sure I remember to talk about them. But basically these two, which are kind of exotic, so we'll talk about those towards the end. But that's why, again, I wanted to split into 2 lectures, because I wanted to give decent time to this one. All right, so let's, again, let me just do a quick little refresh so that this thing remembers on here. And we'll just do a quick look at some of the intro slides, but then at this point go straight into to the example. All right, so let me move down. I'm just, like, I have no interest in bringing this thing up. So we're going to talk about case manipulation functions. In this case, this actually does manipulate entire strings. This is actually grabbing pieces of strings. In fact, all of these things are case functions, or not case, character functions. But besides characters, we're also going to get into numerical stuff, date stuff, and then more exotic stuff, which is what this stuff is. And we'll be using the dual table for all of this. And in case you've forgotten, the dual table is not, it's not important what's in the dual table. The dual table basically has got nothing in it. It's got one row with one column called dummy. What's important about the dual table is that you can, like, get it to usually testing your functions, or in this case, the great Hello World program SQL. The Hello World SQL program is what I meant to say. Let's keep the strings together. Boom, right? So I didn't want X, but I want to basically say Hello World. Or a function that you guys are probably more familiar with now, maybe, is sysdate. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that function doesn't take any input, but it returns the date. All right, so back to here. Okay, so functions, it's a block of code stored on the database. It is not like a procedure. A procedure does something, a function returns something. Now, I think most of you, if you got some kind of knowledge in Python or Java or whatever, by the way, I'm speaking out of my rear end when it comes to Java because I've forgotten how most of that works. But I know that Python, it's all functions. They don't have a concept of procedures. They basically just make functions that don't return anything. And that's basically a procedure. But anyway, in the world of SQL, a function is definitely going to be returning something. Usually accepts an argument and then returns something. There are actually 3 classes, at least, of functions. And if you look in the actual documentation, you'll see, oh, they didn't break it up here. Anyway, okay, good enough. In other documentation, they break it up. But anyway, you got single row functions, which return every single row. So for example, that sysdate function I just showed you. Let's do a quick little select asterisk from, and I've forgotten it already. Is it orders? Orders, the book. Here's where I wish I was looking at the book. Orders, there's orders. All right, good deal. So I basically want order date and sysdate. Notice that sysdate is going to fire on every single row. And so what we'll see is sysdate on every single row. Compare that with the group functions, which in theory you've already been exposed to, like count, for example. A little preview for tomorrow. If I go count everything, that's a function, that's its input, and it returns the number of rows. That's its output. Right? So that is a multi-row, and that's what it's talking about here. That's a multiple row function, which we cover next week. All right. All right, so roundabout now is where I'm going to basically stop looking at slides, but I do like how they kind of broke it up. They broke them up in basically case conversion, character manipulation, numerical, dates, regular expressions, which I may have to go look at the slides for because I don't use them that much, and they're very powerful, but challenging for me to remember. And then the more exotic stuff, which basically fits into other. And the way I learned this too, I think there's like character, numeric, date, yeah, and I guess other. Oh, well, anyway. So let's look at some of this, and some of this I can maybe use the chat. If you are following along, you got a database up, I can maybe use the chat to sort of paste some of the code in there to get you going. All right, so I'll keep my chat up over here. So let's see where they're going with the lower function. Okay, so they're going with customers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go select asterisk from customers. Okay, so notice that the name is in basically title case. If we don't want the name in title case, we actually had a couple of functions for that actually change the case. Oh, that's sad. Somebody got kicked out, but now he's back in. Anyway, upper, lower, and init cap, which is basically Oracle's version of capitalize. So if we just have last name the way it is, and then upper last name, which you might suspect will do nothing, lower last name, and then this init cap. Sometimes the best way to do this stuff is just basically see what do they all do. And so in this case, upper converted to uppercase. It already was an uppercase, so it's not a big deal. Lower drops it, and then there's a init cap. Now sometimes you do actually just want this, for it to look nicer, right? So for example, here I want the last names to have a nice little, like a more human feel to it. But there's another reason a lot of times case functions are actually used, and that is to make something called like a case insensitive query. So if I basically said where, if I go where the last name is equal to, and let's just pick on Thompson here because I'll be able to spell it. So I go where the last name is equal to Thompson. Well, this is very convenient because in theory, oh, actually, it's not very convenient, right? So the user basically entered in Thompson here, but now it's, hey, it doesn't match. But of course it doesn't match because in the database, Thompson is all in uppercase. So sometimes what people will do is they'll put like an upper around one end and then an upper on the other end of the restriction. All right, so let me just run this and this thing will work. There it is right there. But, and you might be thinking, well, that's kind of dumb. Why don't you just type this in uppercase? Well, I want you to make that extra step and think that maybe this was a variable that got passed in from maybe a web page or some program or something like that. And you as a developer can't actually depend on it being in a particular case. So that's kind of a cool thing about case, oh, that was bad, about case functions. Okay, so let me just get this going. Thompson, all right, good deal. Now let me show you something else. Can I even show it to you here? We might have a break, and I might actually be. I'll be able to show it better in the other environment if I got time. Yeah, or I'll just knock it off the next week. So that's fine. All right. So there's just some sort of case functions, and that's what they talked about as their first sort of set. All right, and what we did is we did lower, upper, and a init cap. But now let's imagine that instead of that, what we want to do is you want to do manipulation. Okay, so we actually want to manipulate the string. And I'll show you a really common one that gets used almost all the time. So we got basically last name and first name. So let's clean up the projection a little bit. I'll put first name here, first name first, and then last name. All right. So what if I really want to have I want to make a user ID. And the user ID is the first letter of the first name and the first 6, we'll say, of the last name. Okay. So in the case of Benita Morales, it's going to be B Morales all together. And then maybe we'll just, stick in a domain after that. So how would you do that in SQL? Because you certainly could do this in SQL. And actually, one other thing I want to talk about too for a second, because you guys are more advanced. What you want to do is sometimes when you have a problem like this, right? Convert a bunch of names to uppercase or whatever. User IDs. you'll have a few choices as to where you want to do that. Do you want to do that right on the web page, right? Using, I'm just going to make it up and go JavaScript. I have no idea what you'd use it now, but anyway, using JavaScript. Do you want to do that in some kind of middle tier, right? Using whatever program that's actually out there, and I don't think that's how you spell it. Or do you want to do that in the database? And that is a decision that you guys have to make after talking with people. Most of the time, the argument was that something like converting this to to a user ID, why not do that down the database? Because the theory was the database was a very powerful processing engine. I don't know if that's true anymore, but the bias always for our team at Oracle was to do the calculation as low as possible. Also, by the way, to ensure that everyone was doing the user ID calculation the same way versus having that code sitting in every single web page. But what do I know? So let's go ahead and make the demonstrate some of these functions by making an actual user ID. So not surprisingly, or maybe it is surprising, to get a portion of a string, you're actually asking for a substring, and there's a function there called substr. And so I could go substr first name, and then typically at this point I got to say where do I want it to start, and where how long. Sorry, how long? Yeah, how long? In this case, it's how long. So let's go, and there's our letters there, B and R. Now, if I want to get that first 6 of the last name, it's where do I want to start? Last name. I want to start at the beginning and go for 6. And I missed a comma somewhere. Open, close. This is didn't miss a comma. I had an extra parentheses. All right. So anyway,
so you don't want to.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't want to use 0 then as your first position.
No, you know what? And that's very human, or not human, very programming of you, and it makes sense that. I'd be careful. In Oracle, you don't, but in other implementations of this idea, you would.
Oh, okay.
So just do an experiment when you first have to do it to see where it actually is on like a known string, and see whether it starts at 0 or starts, or look it up in the documentation. All right. So
yeah,
now,
I just know from other
Yeah. I know for sure. No, other ones they go from In fact, even some other ones, this will be the starting position, and this will be the ending position. Right, but that's not actually the case. Just look at this, because if I go change this to, actually I won't change this. I'll copy it so we can see it side by side. Okay, so and I'm getting even rusty on these ones too now because I'm now being exposed to other kinds of databases. But this one I believe is starting in the second position and going for 6 still. So it's not 2 to 6, it's 2, 4, 6. And so do we see any? Yeah, right. There, so no, is there anybody with a longer name? I guess. Yeah, 1 for 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, there it is. That's a good example right there that demonstrates it.
And then obviously Live SQL is always going to use Oracle's implementation of SQL.
Yeah, Live SQL is an Oracle product, so yeah, it's definitely going to use Oracle's SQL. But I know. Mr. MariaDB over there, he's going to have his own little issues with what the functions actually are, and then SQL Server, and then Teradata, right? So yeah, it's going to be it's interesting, and that's why and I don't think actually does this guy have a substring? Substring's pretty common, so he might actually do it, but no, I didn't see it. Nope. All right. Oh, and while I'm showing you this, let me show you something here. Is it here? Character. Okay, hang on a second. Let me just go. That's nice, but I don't want that one. I want that one. That's the one I want. So what I'm showing you here is you'll see this in a lot of different kinds of documentation, but this is basically a nice image of how the function is supposed to work. So you can kind of see what I did a substring, I passed the name, there's the position, there's the length, close parentheses. And then they give you some other neat stuff that you can actually do with it. All right. So documentation is your friend here for sure, right? So maybe not for this course, but in real life. Okay. Now, a couple things about substring I should point out. If you basically don't specify the last argument, what you're going to get is it's going to go from 2 until the end, right? So it's going to go 2 to the end. So this guy is going starting at the H and going to the end, right? So a lot of times people will do that if they're just basically grabbing the first part of the string. And I think, is this right, Grant? I bet you, you know what? I don't even know why I did this. Let's see. Well, yeah, that doesn't make any sense to the thing. There is a way to make it run backwards, but I can't remember how to do it. And you're not, you know, that's something you'll have to figure out if you ever have to do it. You want to do it for your assignment. All right, so we're well on our way now, by the way, to getting our user ID, because we got right now the first letter and we got the last 6. So how do you put them together? How do you put 2 strings together?
You concatenate them.
You concatenate them. So now the way you've seen concatenate is this. Right, that's the way. Oh no, not quite curly braces. You've seen it with the pipes, right? Was it pipes already? I don't know. Anyway, that's how you've seen it. But there is actually also this one is close to ANSI. There's a function called concat, and what concat does is it concatenates. Now I don't like concat because it's a little clunky, and you can only concatenate 2 things together. So if I wanted to actually concatenate 3 strings together, I'd have to concat the first 2 and then concat that into the second one, right? So it's a little cumbersome. That's why a lot of people like the pipes or in other database implementations, the plus. So, but I'm showing you this for another reason, because I want you to see nesting. So I've taken this subquery and then this subquery, and then it's all nested in, sorry, query. I'm way ahead of myself. I've taken this function and I've taken this function and I've nested it inside of another function. And now if I want to drop that case to be lowercase, I can go lower, and that'll basically now drop the result of the concatenation into lowercase. And then if I wanted to add the domain of, let's say, DTC whatever, I could go again, concat that with at dctc.edu. There's that email address, and then at this point I'd go as email, just because who needs to see that formula anymore? So that is a fairly good example using those kind of functions. Honestly, the way I would have done that though is I just would have gone take the lower of, actually I know what I would have done. I would have gone take that string and concatenate it with that string. And that's, I think it's just that, I think, concatenate with that string. I'm worried about my parentheses. I'm thinking that I got 1 too many there. All right, so first of all, let's just see if that actually works. It's going to be an uppercase, but aside from that, okay, so somebody's off. So you're not there, there's this thing. What are you doing? Let's drop that. It's probably going to be in the wrong case, though. It is, and so now I just basically dump all that into lowercase. So welcome to the world of SQL. Always 2 ways to do, at least 2 ways to do the same thing. Okay, so that was a good demonstration, I think, of substring, and also we got the bonus of concat there. Any kind of questions on that particular one? So looking, I'm trying to follow the book relatively closely here. So there's an in-string example. So let's talk about the in-string example. In-string basically returns where something is in the string. All right, so I'm going to go give me in-string, and then I pass in the thing. So let's go last name. Okay, and then I'm going to say is A in that string? Okay, so is A, I put it back to uppercase because the source data is in uppercase. I go run, and what you can see here is that A is in the 4th position. 1, 2, 3, 4. So A is in the 4th position. Thompson doesn't have an A. Notice it doesn't return no. Its answer is basically 0. Now, I could have made an argument that maybe null would have been a good answer too, but the answer is actually 0. So if there is no A, it's in the 0 spot. Here's one in the 3rd spot. So 1, 2, 3. So that's basically in string. It works on more than one character, by the way. So if I said AL, and I go, we'll see this guy's still 4, but we probably lost most of the other ones. Oh, right here we go, AL as well. So where would you use, by the way, this whole lecture is a lot like going down the spice rack in a grocery store. You know, here's some cumin. Where would you use that? Oh, I'd use it here. Here's some cinnamon. Where would you use that? Where would you use garlic powder? So eventually it's when you start cooking that you start figuring out when you actually need to use these particular functions. But anyway, but what's important though is that you know they exist, because I got to tell you, earlier in my career, I had to convert a bunch of decimal numbers to Roman numerals, and I thought it's ridiculous that I have to code this. I'm sure someone else has already done this already. And I asked around and I got no help, and eventually I wrote my own Grant Spencer Roman numeral conversion function, only to find out 3 weeks later, I happened to see when I was working on another program that someone had actually written something for that. So when it comes to, like, you know, writing a thing like this, you know, finding a string within a string, it's important that you know, you might not remember in string, but you'll remember that it's possible, and then be able to Google it and find it. All right, so okay, so that's in string. So where sometimes you use that, if you remember my social security example, I'm not going to code it, but remember, you know, go something like this, right? And you basically want to find all the 3 3s, but you don't want to do now. One of the options I told you guys about was the like, right? We could have gone like, and then it would have been underscore 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 33%. I don't know if that's, oops, I don't know if that's familiar to you. Do you remember that vaguely from before? But that was sort of the code that could have been done for that. But another piece of code would have been where instra SSN, we're looking for 33 in the 5th position. Something like that. Actually, you know what? No, what am I doing? I'm not, geez. Long day. That would have been it. All right, so where 33 is in the 5th position, and I know I'm off by a quote or whatever, but anyway, that's one of the things that you do with this. So part of it, and also sometimes you're looking, maybe I'm looking to basically splice the string up, like I'm trying to find a particular number and grab everything up to that number. Well, then what you do is you find out where, like, for example, if I just wanted to have this, but I couldn't guarantee that 33 was here. 33 could be here, or it could be up here, or it could be back here. But I want everything up to 33. Then what I end up doing is I basically end up doing something like basically going substring the social security number, start with, start at the 1st position, and then go for whatever that returns. So go for that, and that would actually, again, grab the first 5. So anyway, so that's what in string's about. It's basically a way for you to get a string or a location of something inside of a string. Other common ones are the length. So now I've moved on to page 356. Length is a no-brainer here. So if you're straining from in string, then don't worry about it, because now we're back to something fairly peaceful. First name. So here we're basically saying, hey, show me the length of first name. So it's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Here's your skill testing question. What do you think the length of null is? It's null. Again, echoing the idea that if you don't know what something is and you add something to it, it's null. You subtract something from it, it's null. If you don't know what it is, then you also don't know its length. It's null, right? I bring that up because sometimes what will happen is that you're doing a query of data coming out of a table, and maybe that particular person didn't have a first name, then you're going to get a null coming out of here. So what you probably want to do is treat it with the null function, which occurs later on in the course. Sorry, in this chapter. All right, so we got length. So we've done a lot of case stuff, or a lot of character stuff. We got a couple more, or a few more to go. We got these things called L pads and R pads. So let's have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to leave this guy completely and go back to Dual for a second. Okay, I'm going to go back to Dual. I'm going to go. All right. So I don't know how many people get paper checks anymore, but I want you to imagine that you're going to get paid the whopping sum of $2,000. Actually, well, what are those clearinghouse things? $1 million. So there it is, $1 million. All right. So there's $1 million, and we go. Now that's a string. All right. What I can do is I can go LPAD that string to let's say 20, and whatever you're not using, put an asterisk in. And what you get is something that looks kind of like what the checks are. Have you ever got a check like that where basically it blanks out the stuff right, the leading part of the dollar sign? So that's basically an L pad. Now it does have a partner of called R pad. So there is such a thing called R pad, which will basically pad it on the right hand side. I will tell you too that if this was numerical, so if this was a number, let's just make it 1 million. So and let's go LPAD again. So if that's a number, it's going to take that number, convert it into a string, and then slap a bunch of asterisks in front. Because again, well, I don't know. You know what? I'm thinking there's one piece of this that's bothering me a little bit that I think some of you might be thinking about. It's like, Grant, it doesn't look like money anymore, so your example doesn't make a lot of sense. So let me just do another sort of out of turn, but geez, come on, man. Must have lost its focus. Anyway, that's a number. I wanted to make it look like money. We are going to see these functions in a few minutes, but they're called conversion functions, where they convert it from one data type to another data type. There's a conversion function in Oracle called toChar, which converts a numerical into a character string. Now, we're not going to see too much change here, except what I can do is pass in there. What's called a mask. Okay, oh, I don't need that parentheses. And what that does is it takes $1 million, converts it to a character string with that mask. And I can actually remove those spaces, but I don't want to right now because I think I've already gone too far with this example. All right, so I will go one step further though. When you're Oracle, you're dealing with a global database, and not everybody's in American or even Australian or Canadian currency. So sometimes what you need to do is you need to specify that I'd like this to be in the local currency. So there's an L, using local groupings, because other places will use the period where we use the comma, local decimals. And so that would, oh wow, what did I do wrong? Oh, you know what? That's interesting. Actually, I don't know what the what local means in this database. Anyway, on the databases I've used, this would have basically been fine. I'm thinking that's a really neat thing. That's a really neat thing. All right, anyway, whatever. Okay, good. So LPAD, RPAD, and the other option, by the way, is to trim things. So padding basically spreads things out. if I'm going with something like maybe it was a char value, which has got grant in it, and I don't want to have all those spaces in front, what I can do is I can go L trim from this string any spaces. And what that'll do is it'll cut the spaces off the front, right? Now there's an, I tell you what, let's do this. There's an R trim, just R, an R trim, which trims it from the back, which we didn't really see, I guess, but it did. It would have trimmed it from the back. And then there's another version of this. I think it's trim space from that string. Totally different syntax. Oh, geez. Okay, I reserve the right for this not to work. It's not in the book anyway. No, it's not from. Trim. Oh, one more guess, and then I'll give up. Yeah, you're pretty mad, aren't you? Anyway, there is an actual trim function, which the syntax is basically trim this something from a string, and that would actually pull from both sides. The other option is to nest it. You could have gone an L trim and then shoved that into an R trim, and that would have also done it as well. Okay, so that's the trimmings. All this stuff is characters now. We've done the case conversions, we've done the substring and in-string, we've done some paddings, and we've done some trimmings. Now what we're trying to do, I think, is this the last one for the characters? Yeah, well, sort of. Yeah, okay. We got a couple of replacing functions, and for this one, I'm going to go back to sort of the examples in the book. So let's go look at customers. That's what they're using. Customers, and they're using address. All right, so let's go look at address on its own. And I think we want a particular address. We want where the state's in Florida. Okay, so where the state is in Florida. All right, we don't go. Okay, cool. So we got these PO boxes, and it looks like what they want is they want to basically take PO and replace it with post office. And so I'll keep address here, but I'll go replace in the address PO with post office. That's a replace. Now there's another thing that does something almost like it called translate. I just want to see what they did with that. Translate that to that. Hang on a second. Modify single characters rather than a character string. Okay. All right, so I'm going, are they still in customers for this one? No, they're in contracts. Okay, so let's go look at that together for a second. Contracts. So we're in contracts, and what are we looking at in contracts? We are looking at the name. Okay, so I want the name. So let's get familiar with our data first of all. I definitely encourage you to do this whenever you're, contacts, not contracts. I've been working with a lot of contracts today, but anyway, so it's contacts, and even that's not right because of what? Contacts. Was there no contacts in the book schema? Is this just a new example he just threw on us? All right, so they don't have it, so we're stuck now just going back to look at it. So let's just go quickly down to it and bring it up. This is what I was trying to do. And so what I guess this is doing is it's basically taking a single, multiple, I think, single commas and replacing them with dashes. And that's what we see here. So replace basically grabs, I think it just stops at one, just does it once, whereas translate will do every single one in the string. So so here you can see the commas have been replaced with underscores. And then this guy here is saying translate, take the comma A's and do that to it. So where's a comma? There's a comma A. And Y, oh, right over here, and it dropped that to lowercase. So it's sort of demonstrate. They're demonstrating it. I think it just does it multiple times in a string, whereas I think a replace just does it like once. I think. You guys can prove me wrong. All right, I already talked about concat, so I don't have to do it. That is finally it for the character functions. There's a lot of character functions, so I understand if it's a little disjointed, but there's a lot of character functions. So good for you guys to kind of go and look that up. Ready for something slightly easier now? We're going to talk about some of the numeric functions. And I'm not going to take you through some of the more obtuse numeric functions, because there are plenty. Actually, let's go have a look. There are plenty of them. They didn't break it up right there. Round? No, I don't think they broke them up like that. But anyway, I mean, look, you guys with your old trigonometry stuff, you too can go relive your trigonometry days with Oracle. But anyway, I'm going to go look at books, and I'm going to go look at the books. What they're doing is they're looking at the title, and they're looking at retail, and that's about it. That's all I want to basically look at out of that example. I think retail is not spelled like that too, is it? Thank you. There it is. Okay, I'm going to go. Oh, the contacts are in publisher. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Well, no. You gotta keep going. Know when to hold it, know when to fold it. All right. So these are numbers. If I want, I can round the number. So I can round retail to the nearest integer. That's what that comma 0 means. Round it to the nearest integer. I go. And so we're going to see this guy become 31, right? We're going to see this guy become 60. Now, just so you know, the default is 0, so you could, in theory, leave it off. But then what happens is that future programmers who aren't as good as you won't know what's going on. So I always put comma 0 in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to show you that I can also round it to the first decimal spot. So what we're going to see, are we going to see anything? No, they're all going to be, all right here. Yeah. So that's the better example. So what happens here is that 5 gets rounded and this becomes 8. So 28.8. So that's pretty cool. Most of the other ones, by the way, they're going to be rounding right up anyway. You can also, by the way, round obviously to deeper numbers, and this will just give us almost the same name, the same numbers. You can round up. So 0 is an integer, but you can also round to -1. That would actually round it to the nearest 10, not the nearest 10th. And so what we'd see there with the 1 is that 22, gets rounded down to 20. Okay, 75 gets rounded up to 80. So -1 actually shoots it up to the nearest 10, and this pattern continues. So if I go 2, we're going to see probably a lot of zeros. Yeah, and then things that could be rounded up to 100 are rounded up to 100. So that's pretty cool. Not a lot of people know that, so congratulations, you do. All right, so rounding to the 0 is the default, but I think you should still put it in, and you can round up to like tens, hundreds, thousands, whatever. So that's pretty cool. Now let's go back and round this again. We'll just keep it rounding to the nearest 0. There's another thing out there, and it's called trunk. And let's see what the difference is between rounding and trunking. So notice here with 30, best examples right at the top, 30.95. So when you round it, it's going to be rounded up. Truncating to the nearest integer basically means I don't want anything after the decimal. The 95 cents gets ripped off and it goes down to 30. Okay, it goes down to 30. So, and here, for example, this guy, he's really close to 60, but he's not going to make it because we're truncating down. So truncate basically lops off the change. You might be thinking, why would you do that? And let me show you an example that is kind of from my more financial existence. So, oh, and actually, let me show you this too in light of, yeah, actually, okay, I know what I'll do. We'll talk about how old these order dates are. okay, how old these order dates are. So it's a little bit of a jump because we're about to talk about date functions, but this is a good spot for it. So if you know today's date in Oracle land, you go sysdate, right? A lot of other places they'll have a today, or even Oracle's got something called the current date. We also have something called order date, and that will show me right there that, oh, and let's, was it order number? I can't remember what the key was. The key was order number. Good. Even though if I remember correctly, isn't this a string? I don't know. But anyway, let's just grab them and put them in there. Okay, done. So there's order number with the dates. Now what I want to know is I want to know how old is that date. So what I can do is I can go sysdate subtract order date, right? And that will get me something really kind of cool. It'll give me a number. What do you think that number means?
Is that like the number of seconds?
Nope, not the number of seconds. Remember, these dates are pretty old. This is from like 2009. But watch this, though. Your seconds is coming up. Watch this. Notice how the last numbers are like 1481. I'm going to run it again. And those numbers are different. I'm going to run it again. And those numbers are different. So it's definitely, oh, that's nice. 1481, what are the chances? Anyway, here's the deal. This is the number of days old that particular order is. It's the number of days. And although I'm going to return to truncate in a few minutes, I'm going to say that most of the time they don't care if the number of days, they don't typically round that. This order is 4,032 days old. It's not 4,033 days old. They would typically truncate that. And we're going to see that when we start looking at some of the more financial parts. So in this case, truncating, what it does, and I'm sorry, I should follow my own advice, comma 0. I don't need it, but I should put it in there. That'll basically show me the number of days. You wouldn't ever round up a date calculation like that. We're going to get a little bit more sophisticated with dates, but for now, that's good enough. So we're with the numerical, we're looking at rounding and trunking. The other numerical one out there is mod, which is short for modulus. And what an interesting example that they've got there. Why did they do that? Anyway, okay, let me just show you a quick modulus calculation. So I'm going to go dual, and I'm going to go 4 divided by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is not a trick question. The answer is going to be 2, right? Now, what is 5 divided by 2? So 5 divided by 2 is not going to be 2. It's going to be 2 and some change, right? So there's a thing out there called mod 5, 2. What that does is it returns not the actual quotient, but the remainder. It shows, so, this wasn't, really 2.5. It was basically 2 with a remainder of 1. Mod basically shows the remainder. So at the very least, what this can be used for back in the good old days was when you had reports and you wanted to basically alternate every line. So one line was gray and the other line wasn't. This was a great way to basically say, is it even or is it odd? So is line 5 even or is it odd? If this thing was 0, if the result was 0, then it'd be even. If the result was 1, it'd be odd. That was one of the calculations that one of the reasons we used it. It's also, of course, used for time, because that's a base 60 thing. It's basically used whenever you basically want to peel off the remainder. The thing is, it's used infrequently that people sometimes forget it's there, but it's definitely used. I know in Canada, the Canadian social insurance number is one ginormous modulo calculation. It's nothing even close to the American number. There's the whole thing is run through some algorithm, and basically if that number running through the algorithm pops out at 0, then that number is actually accurate. So anyway, that is that's the modulo. Modulo, just look at the example in the book if it makes sense to you. But it returns the remainder of a division. The two more relatively easy ones we'll just show here is absolute. Absolute value here is showing the absolute value of a number. So if you've forgotten your basic math, it basically just removes the sign and always returns positive, right? So the absolute value of 3 is the same as the absolute value of -3. They both get bumped up. And then the other one out there that's kind of cool that gets used a bit. Oh, by the way, why do you use that? Sometimes you're comparing the differences of like how many days apart, for example, are two transactions, and you don't necessarily care if it's negative or positive. You just want to know how many days apart are they. And then over here with this guy with the power, I mean, there's plenty of reasons to use a power calculation. So here it's like 2 to the power of 2, and this will basically hopefully return 4 if I did that right. And then if I want a square root, there's actually a square root function, but you can also just go and bring something to the power of the what's it called when you take, I don't know, reciprocal. Anyway, when you basically take the fraction and you flip it. So instead of 2/1, it's 1/2. And at that point, I've now just basically brought something up to the power of that. All right, so definitely cool. Think about those. Let's talk about date functions and finally get caught up to a good example of date functions. Okay, so they did, with their instincts, they did actually use the order date and the sys date. So let's go orders, and let's again go back to the idea of the order number, the order date, and the sys date. And did I do that right? I did, at least I'm close. So there's those two things. All right, now, as I said, we want to know how far apart those are. So what we would do, is a date subtract another date returns the number of days between that date, right? And so in this case, we're back to that sort of earlier example. Perfect example now, perfect time to use something called absolute. To basically say that's how long ago that date was. Okay, so cool. Let's get a little bit cooler than this now. Let's imagine that you want to know, this is how many days there are between those particular dates. So we're going to go as days between. Okay, and let's put this on its own line because I'm going to get funky with it. And let's go comma. And now what I want to know is how many weeks are between this. What do you think the calculation would be for that, for weeks between? All right, so this will give me how many weeks are between. And that's kind of cool. But what if you want to go to the next step now and work out how many months between? Well, that's that becomes more challenging because not all the months have the same number of days and all that kind of stuff. So thankfully, there is something out there called months between. So we're back to fairly normal functions now. What are the months between order date and sys date? And I forgot a comma. So what are the months between order date and sys date? There are that many months. Now, if I want to know how many years ago that was, I would divide that by 12. That's how many years ago. And now for sure, I'd consider truncating that. So I would truncate that. And now what I'm going to say is that this order, 1000, is 11 years old, which also shows how old this data is, by the way. So, so that's sort of a little bit of a good example of a date function and what's cool about it. So sys date is a date function. Months between is a date function. Another thing that you can do with dates is you can find out what is like 5 months from now. I'm just going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify this. All right, so I'm just going to do that. And let's imagine I want to know what is 5 months out. So what I'd go add months, sys date, and then 5. And this will basically show us the time that we can finally get out of our houses, I think. So apparently there it is, 14th of September. Some of you will be starting school again then. So that's basically going 5 months into the future. There is no subtract months, by the way, but if you just passed in a negative number, you'll go back in time to Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. So that's basically a little bit there with the add months. It's a nice way to sort of move, either project or find out, like a year ago, for example, what was happening a year ago. Those are typical kind of calculations like that. Another one that's kind of cool is, and am I right? Yeah, is next day. I'm going to say, what is the next Friday after today? What's the next Friday after today? So the 17th, when I'll get my first paycheck from Blue Cross, when I'll stop eating out of dog food cans. That's going to be basically the next Friday after this particular date. This is definitely a cooler calculation, especially with paychecks when you think about it, when they're every 2 weeks, right? So you want to know what's the next particular day. You know, what's the first Monday after the close of a quarter, you know, those kind of things. That's when you kind of use that. And then the last day, which is the last one, now sitting on 369. Last day is the last, last day of the month, I think, right? Last day, except it always remembers the last day of the month. Okay, so last day, what's the last day of the month for the month that we're in? And we go, and it's the 30th, right? Now, if I was to basically jump ahead, let's jump ahead by a month. So notice that we're on 30. So if we jump ahead, we're going to be in May. So what's the last day of the next month? And I blew it. Add months, and I got to basically specify what months. What am I adding to it? There it is. So it's May 31st. These functions are awesome if you just basically play with them, and if you definitely, you know, if you have that book schema code, you can basically follow the examples in the book. I'm not, but you could basically follow the examples in the book. Some of mine are right out of it, but most are not. Let's talk a little bit about. They want to talk about the to-date function next, and I don't. I want to talk about the to-char function first. So what I want to do is I want to show you a little bit about converting a date to a string. So what do we have for time? Because I know it gets a little hard, some of the stuff. Let me do this one, and then we'll have a quick break, and then we'll return and basically plow through the rest of this. They want to talk about the to-date function, but let me first show you the to-char function. So I already showed you the to-char function with that $1 million, right? I basically showed you, hey, look, you can take to-char, take a numerical value, pump in a date format, or a numerical format, I should say. Oh, what number did I pass in there? I'll just do that. Dot 00. And what this does is to-chars, it takes that numerical value and returns a string. And I must have done something wrong here. By the way, that's not it, but I may as well fix that. Why are you mad at me? That's the number. Did I just not highlight it properly? Nice. Thanks for the backup there. All right, good deal. All right, so that's a to-char takes something that's not a character string and makes it a character string. It does the same thing for dates. If I basically go sysdate is not it's not a string, it's a date, right? 1,000 or whatever that is, 100,000 is not $100,000. It's a number. So this is a date. That's a number. Now what I can do is I can convert it to a string. Okay, so to-char. What that will do is it'll convert the sysdate to a string. Now at first you're not going to see any change at all except the column heading. But now what I can do is I can change, just like I can change 100,000 to look like money, I can start to change the way the date looks. So I can start passing in a date string. Now this is the most unimaginative one because this is how it already looks, right? The date already looks like this, so you're not going to see anything except I got an extra parentheses, okay? So you're not going to see any change, but what I can do, for example, if I want it to be the full year, I can change the format a little bit so that it's the full year. And now I can see that. If I don't like this because it's not like the way that dates are typically done, I can go, now I've actually forgotten what it is, but is it MMDDYYY? I think is that how we do them here? Anyway, I'm going to do that, and we're just going to go boom, and now look, it changes. Now, what's interesting, when this was MON, we got APR. We got an uppercase because of that format string. If I put that format string in title case, we're going to see it go in title case. If I spell the whole word out, we'll get the whole word out. So this is all my way to sort of introduce the thing that's sitting on page 370. It's got some sort of format strings. And I want you to sort of understand that what I'm doing is it's pretty sophisticated. I'm passing in a string saying, this is how I want the date converted into characters. So let me show you kind of a cool one. I'm going to go DD month, okay, comma, and go and do that. So now I've got basically the 15 April, whatever. Now look at this. I can actually go 15th, and now I've got 15th, which is kind of neat, right? And you're probably thinking, well, Grant, what about of? It's the 15th of April. If I go of, sadly, it probably won't work because it doesn't recognize of as a date conversion string. But I can put any literal I want inside of a literal by using double quotes. And now basically at this point, I've got the 15th of April, 2020. Now, I'm just gonna show you this one thing. This is a good reason maybe to record it because I don't know where we are in the how long it's been. So it's been what, an hour, and I don't know where we are. But anyway, you're gonna want to return to this at some point. We got all these spaces because it's leaving spaces for the longest month, which is December, right? So if it's filling it with spaces. If you want to get rid of the spaces, fill mode, you turn it on. Actually, sorry, you know what? Let me turn it on, not there. It's like a toggle. I probably turn it on right there. Fill mode month. If I go fill mode month, those spaces are gone, and now it looks beautiful. All right. Quick little bit of review for this now. DD is the day of the month. DDD is the day of the year. Right? That doesn't make any sense anymore, by the way, the rest of this. D, just D on its own. Just D on its own is the day of the week. And then if you wanted to spell out the day, day. And that, I think the fifth will probably, yeah, the fifth will blow it up. So let's just go pull that out. Day will now get me the day like that. All right, so that's the day, that's the actual day of the week. All right. Someone else is now in the waiting room. All right, good. All right, so that's I mean, I could go on because there's plenty of other stuff. This is taking a date and making it look like something that you want. I bring this up because now I'm going to finish this part with why they bring up to date. Sometimes, so let's go back to looking at the orders for a second. We're going to go asterisk from orders. Okay, so sometimes what happens now is I want to have every order from that date. Okay, so what I would do is I'd go where the order date is equal to this. Now, this is not a date, that's a string. Okay, thankfully it matches and I should be able to get the right answers. But what if the date wasn't coming like that? What if the date actually came like this, 03 31 2009, right? Which is just as much of a date as that one was. It's just as much of a date from the database's perspective. It's a bunch of characters. But now it's not going to work anymore. This happens, oh, nice. This happens all the time when I'm dealing with trying to import data from a non-Oracle database. The date formats are almost never an Oracle format. So I have to somehow convert those dates into a date. Like I actually have a problem right now where I have to do that. So what I would do is I'd say, I tell you what, take that string, convert it to not a char, but to a date. And that's what that page is about. Convert it to a date. The first characters are going to be a month. You're going to get a slash. You're going to get a day. You're going to get a slash. You're going to get a 4-digit year. And now what I'll get is a nice, clean run. That is a very, 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 very important skill. All right, because a lot of times, if your data is coming from Europe, it's going to be different. If it's coming from the States, it's going to be different. If it's coming from the military, it's going to be different. So you need to know how is the data coming in. And obviously, right now, what I did is I took the string. I could have just typed it, but I want you guys to remember that could have been a parameter that could have been passed in by something. And so you need to basically be able to take control of that date and then convert it to an actual date that this thing can actually then compare it to. All right, well, that was a lot of fun. They talk about rounding dates, which you already did. They do talk about current date, which I'm going to leave. I'm probably going to, we're going to break. I'm going to talk about some of the more exotic functions, probably for another maybe 35 minutes or so. I'm going to pause the recording, and it's 7:10, so let's get up, stretch, splash your face. 7:15, we'll start up again. All right. What I want to do now is I want to basically go to look at the more exotic functions, and then deal with functions that deal with nulls, functions that also have some kind of case structure to them. And if you don't know what case structure is, that's sort of like the if, then, else kind of stuff, because that is really common in the land of SQL. So I'm going to show you a regular expression example right out of the book, actually. But before I do, I just want you to understand that right now, if you're looking for patterns in data, you would be looking at using the like, right? You'd be looking at using the like. So going back to my example right there. So if I basically said, so street name of Orange. So I'm going to basically say where the ship street is like Orange, right? That's the level of sophistication you guys have right now with looking for patterns inside data. And it's pretty good. I mean, it does a good job. Now, what if you wanted to basically find something, you wanted to basically determine, is this numerical or is it characters? That's tougher. And before I knew regular expressions, I wrote my own little function for that. That would basically read it in, try to add a number to it, and if it couldn't add a number to it, it would blow up, and the error message was converted to the output. So it basically, if it blew up, the answer was no. If it was successful, it came out as a yes, or probably use Booleans, to be honest. But either way, that's kind of what I did. But I could use regular expressions for that, right? This would be a bear to try and code that as a like, or make your own function. But I could have used a regular expression. Another thing I could have done, or you can do, is that phone number in the right format? That's, again, too sophisticated for like, but it is something that a regular expression can do. So let me show you the example from the book. Let me get rid of that tab too. So here, what they're saying, and actually, I'm not smart enough to completely read that. So what is that actually saying? Oh, it's actually to identify complete phone numbers. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So they're basically saying, look, the first three characters have got to be numeric. Then there's a period. Then the next three numbers have got to be numeric. Then there's a period. And then the next four numbers have got to be numeric. I mean, do you see how cool that actually is? And what you'd actually have to, if you had to write that yourself, what you'd have to do. So they got a good example in the book about the rake expression like. So this is like the like that we know, except a lot more sophisticated. Later on, they actually have a substring. But my advice is find a nice simple cheat sheet like this. This basically is showing that the regular expression here, if we went AH with an asterisk, it would find anything with a, and then any number, 0 to any number of h's afterwards. And so that's what they're trying to say there, right? And then this guy is great. He basically brings you in very, very slowly to some sort of level of stuff. Regular expressions, by the way, for those of you that are interested in like Linux and command line and all that kind of stuff, it's used there as well. So what's going on in the chat? Can you post that cheat sheet? Yes, I can post a cheat sheet. All right, so cool. All right, so yeah. Okay, so that's a regular expression. It's pretty advanced. In theory, you guys, you know, as you're on your way out into other colleges or the workforce, this definitely separates you from some people if you can actually use it. I got a lot of experience in regular expressions probably about 15 years ago, and then I more or less kind of haven't used them for a while. So it's definitely a skill that just drops out of your head as soon as you've seen it. As soon as you are not using it. Okay. I think the next thing it's going to talk about nulls, and what I want to do is I want to, yeah, actually I'll use the example from the book. The book's fine. Okay, so here we go. We are going to look at books. So I'm going to go, by the way, I'm on page 378. So select asterisks from books. All right, so that's just me getting familiar with the data, right? Been working with this thing for like 30 years. I still do select asterisks from whatever because I want to get an idea what I'm looking at. So in this case, I would like to have the title, I think. Do I care about the discount? I don't really want to, oh, I do care about the discount. Okay, so retail and discount. And that's it, right? That's it for the raw stuff. Okay, so we're gonna go. So I got myself a nice title of the book. There's the retail, there's the discount. Now the discount, there isn't a value in every discount, right? There's not necessarily a value in every discount. So this book, Building Cars with Toothpicks, is $59.95, but there's a discount of $3. So what it looks like is if I wanted to get the actual price of the book, it'd be retail, subtract the discount, right? You know, as price. So I'm going to go. And notice that it worked for Car with Toothpicks, but doesn't work for these guys, 10 minutes a day or Mickey. And this is probably the last time I'll bring it up, but this is because if you have the retail price and you subtract discount, but you don't know what the discount is, then you don't know what the price is. So again, this is null. Every database has got this problem. Relational database has got this problem because they've all inherited something called three-tier logic. It's not, you know, it's something before this, things either were or they weren't. So they're very Boolean. They're either true or they were false. They either, well, anyway, that's it. Now you can actually have true, false, or null, right? So there's three, oh, I can't remember what it's called now. But anyway, there's three possibilities. So here's the deal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a function for this because obviously these databases have been around for a long time. They obviously know how to solve this problem. What they did is they wrote themselves a nice function called the null value, and that's the function that you start seeing on the pages 378 and 379. The null value of discount. So the null value of discount is in fact 0 because logically that's what it is. We have decided as the developers that if there isn't a discount, it's going to be 0. And so now if I go, the price now is what it should be, right? There wasn't a discount on this book, so it's really $30.95. There is a discount on this book, so it's actually $56.95. So no value or something like it in your other worlds, it's very, very, very important that you find that function, all right? Because it's going to be all over the place. I think I remember we did that whole the is null predicate in the where, like where you could say where, like for example, this one, watch this, where discount. If I said where discount is not null, watch what happens. There's no data found. Well, wait a minute. Then they must all be null. No data found because nothing is ever equal to null. It either is null or is not null, right? So is or is not would work. But another way I could have done that is I could have said where the where the null value of discount is equal to 0. That would have been another way to have written that query. Okay, so so those are showing me all the ones that don't in theory have a null. Now I think actually realistically the purist in me would have preferred discount is null. I think that would have been a better way. So we're going to orders for the next example because they're going to show us the sequel of NVL, which is NVL2. So let's go select asterisk from orders. So we had NVL. Now we're going to look at the next guy, which is NVL2. So they, for some reason, are focusing us on order date greater than or equal to, and notice that they put a string. If you're not following along, it's okay because you'll get all the color commentary. But anyway, they're putting a string. You guys know that I'm not going to like that, right? And you shouldn't like that either. Now we're smart enough that we can put a to date there and ensure that we're getting the conversion that we want. We want basically the day, the month, and the 2-digit year. And I guess I got another string in there or something like that. There it is. Okay. We go. Okay. That would be the best way to write that. Now, it looks like we want order date, that's the order number, and the, okay, good. I want to go a little bit beyond what they're showing. So we've got the order number, we got the order date, and then we have ship date, not sys date, ship date. So notice that not everything has got a ship date. So what that means in business terms is that this was ordered but never shipped. And as that was 11 years ago, by the way, it probably won't be shipped. But what we want to do is we want to actually return something that basically said that this was shipped, this was shipped, this was shipped, but this was not shipped. This was shipped, this was shipped, this was not shipped. So there's kind of a cool function out there that does this. NVL2, what I'm basically saying is check out ship date, and if it's null, sorry, if it's not null, it's shipped. If it is null, so there's a little bit of an if going on here, right? If it is null, then it was not shipped. Just using a alias there. That's an NVL2. Well, sometimes, by the way, you know, when you, like you and I kind of falter there for a second because I keep forgetting what this is and what that is. So this is a sort of, it's not the first function we've seen with multiple parameters, right? We've seen two chars that had multiple parameters, but this is kind of interesting here. We basically have the first parameter is the thing that you're testing for null. If it's not null, so if it comes back false, then you put the not null message. If it is null, you put the is null message. So that was kind of cool, and that's again, it's a cool function that not a lot of people know. There's also a null if. I think, boy, they gave a really incredible example, which I'm like incredible as in complicated, so I don't want to do it. But here's the thing: I'm going to go select asterisk from dual, and I'm going to show you two examples of null if. Null if, I'm putting in two of the same numbers. So what this is doing is it's null if they are equal. So given two values, if they are equal, return null. Otherwise, return the first value, I think, by the way. So in their example, yeah, what they're doing here is they're comparing paid to retail, and if they're equal, so if these values are equal, they return a null. Now, it would have been awesome had they used an alias, or maybe they even say it probably in the description as to why they're doing that. Using a null if to display a sales price. Okay, I don't know. I've used it myself when I actually want a flag to basically pop up when I've got two values in the same row that are actually equal. I'm comparing them, right? So So that's kind of where I've actually used it. I wouldn't want the null to pop up. I'd actually want, like, I'd have this in an NBL, and I'd basically say, you know, equal or not equal or something like that, or alert or something. But anyway, so that's a null if. Okay, and I need to go back to this actually. Don't go back to that and go to here. Okay. They talk about the two-char next, which we've already talked about, so I don't need to go into that again. They show you some wonderful codes, which I've already kind of taken you through. So now let's talk about the decode, and let's talk about the sound X. And is that it? That's it. They do talk about the two-number function. Let me, that should have been done back when we did two-char. Remember how I went two-char? Right, I basically took that number and converted it to a character string. Took that number, converts to a character string. I'll tell you what, actually, let's run it so I can get my character string. I got the comma there. Let's go again. All right, so what if I want to take that string and make it into a number? Well, I can go to number, put in that string, maybe suck out those spaces, and say, hey, I'm going to give you a string. It's going to be that format. And now you're seeing the journey of that number. So that number here is taken, made into a string. I take that string and convert it back to a number. So that's what a two number is at the end of the chapter. All right, so let's talk about the decode, though, and the sound X. Sometimes what you want to do is you want to basically put if then else logic in your code. So they did a good example with the tax rate. So let's go and look at customers again. So we're going to look at customers, and specifically what we're going to be looking at is we're going to look at their number, and we're going to look at their state. Now, what I'm showing you now is going to be hideously hard-coded, and sadly, a lot of these things are hard-coded quite a bit. So, so that usually means that, you know, in systems, you got to keep track of where these things are. What we've decided, at least what they've decided, is that California is going to get a tax rate of 8%, Florida is going to get 7%, everyone else gets 0%. All right, so how do we do that? You build a decode very, very slowly. Decode is not ANSI standard, but I'm going to show you the same thing in a case, okay? And then you'll see that, oh, it actually, you know, that is ANSI standard. So decode, take the state. If the state is, what's it, California? If the state's California, then show me 0.08. I'm going to end it right there, and I'm just going to run it. So this is sort of the first line. So you can see when it's California, it's 0.08. Everyone else is no, because I didn't say what to do, right? So what I could say then is I could say otherwise, make it 0. So now California is 0.08, everyone else is 0. Fairly good form, by the way, when you're doing this. Kind of, you know, push it over a little bit so people can see that's the otherwise. Now, the full example is if it's, who's next? Florida? If it's Florida, it's 0.07. And I blew it somehow. How did I blow it? Comma, this guy. Oh, because I got a comma right there. Oh, make up your mind what you're going to do. Comma, comma, so I probably won't have the comma there. Okay, there it is. Okay. So Florida's got the 0.07, California's got 0.08, everyone else down here has got 0. That's a fairly decent example of a decode. It's basically you compare one thing to one value and get one result. It's older than some of you guys are, so it's been around for quite a bit, and it definitely is in a lot of systems, something like this. But the decode isn't the only way to do this, and what I want to do is I want to cut that out. We're going to go to Notepad, and I'm just going to paste it here so I can keep an eye on it. All right, so how would I do that thing as a case statement? Because that actually is closer to truly. Actually, you know what? Here's what I can do. I don't need no notepad. I'll just comment this piece of the code out. There it is. All right, cool. I'm just going to go 0 for now and get that query running again. All right, so here's my zeros. Okay, good. Now I'm going to basically make something called case. We're going to go case state when, yeah, sure. When it's CA, then 0.08. And I think it's just end. I don't think it's end case. I don't need a comma. Let's go, see what that does. Okay, so that worked. Awesome. By the way, I think I'm probably going to need an alias at some point just to get rid of this. I don't like what's happening down here on that line. All right, so anyways, I'm going to run that, and now basically there's a tax rate. Good deal. I can go when it's Florida, then 0.07. And then the bit missing is else. Else 0. Now that is ANSI standard, and you'll actually see that right in. Oh, come on! I know I saw it. Okay, so I'm on it already. All right, there it is. Holy crap, it's right there. So that is a pretty good skill, right? So now notice I did my case a little bit differently. There's actually 2 ways to write the case. So my case was basically going case, we're up here. Case state when that, otherwise, right? Another way I could have written this, and this is where it really shows the power of the case statement, is I could have gone case, and what it would be is, okay, just give me a second here. I can't, that's just making me sad. Let's do that, and do that, and then do this. All right, and when the state is that, when the state is that, run. Okay. Okay, sorry, as T2. Okay. So here's the deal. You're thinking, okay, Grant, for God's sakes, what's going on? This guy here is totally fine if you're just taking a D code and converting it, because the D code is also, you know, comparing one thing to one value to get one result. But this guy is much closer to ANSI standard, because you'll see that this is going when condition then result. And that's your condition. Your condition is this: when state's equal to this, then this. When it's equal to this, then this. Now, what other states do we have here? We got these 2. So watch what I can do with this case statement now. I can also go when, and I can put a little bit more sophisticated thing than equals. I can go when the state is in IL MA, then 0.06. So I'm starting to use slightly more sophisticated stuff than equals. Okay, I'm going to go. And that should have worked. And then the other thing is, okay, order number. Let's go order numbers, these guys. So then I can also go when the order number is between 1017 and 1019, then 0.05. All right, and is that all I'm going to get? Order number, why are you mad at me there for that? Is it not order number? Because it's customer number, Grant, not order number. All right, customer number, so it's, nope, control, and put that there. Okay, go. Okay, we're nearing the end, so just keep your reserves up for just a second here. What I'm trying to show you is that this case is really hard to do before it existed, right? We got the equality stuff. We did that with the decode for hundreds of years, and life was fine. This, in theory, could have been done in a decode. It just would have been a little bit tougher because it's basically saying when it's this or this. So you could argue it would just be 2 more lines in the decode. Having a between any, like, even if this was still state, having a between would have been harder to do for sure. We would have been nesting decodes inside of decodes, and that would have been gross. But watch what's happening here. I'm actually taking and comparing not just state now, but I'm comparing another column entirely. Whereas for the decode, you're stuck with comparing state to this, state to that. So this is definitely more valuable. The only reason I show you decode is because they exist out there in nature and you need to know how to read them. I would never write a decode ever now. Ever, ever, ever. There used to be an argument that decodes are faster, but I don't even think that's true anymore. I think cases, they're ANSI standard, they're more powerful, more flexible, easier to read too, by the way. Like, remember, SQL was originally meant for business analysts. So business analysts reading a decode, not so much, but business analysts reading case statements, they can do that. So, all right. So there you go. Let's catch up with the slides and then be done for the day. So there's that. There's some formatting stuff. There's our decode. That's the one I kind of took you through. And then there's a case. They did something a little bit different because they're trying to highlight, in this case, non-equals. How would you do that in a decode? You couldn't. Well, you could, but it'd be painful, right? So this is a non-equalities, pretty cool. And so what they're trying to show you here is, you know, given this condition, they're level 1, level 2. You can also think of, you know, when you think about credit cards, platinum members, gold members, you know, that kind of thing, right? So that's kind of the cool part of the case statements. SoundX is just weird, and I don't know why she chose to bring it into this, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, give me any name that sounds like Smythe. And so we get Smith and Smith. It sounds really cool, and when I first came across SoundX, my mind was blown. I went, "Oh, really? We can actually do that? Have it that easy?" But it turns out it's not that good. It's not that good. It's only really looking really at the first, we'll say, syllable maybe of the character string, and it's just not that good. So I don't know. There's better ones out there now in the data science world. All right, they talk about 2-number, which I already did, and they talk about the dual table, which I already did. Okay, so we're done that tour of the spice rack. So let's see what I want to damage you guys with. Let's go and look at the actual assignment for this. Again, by the way, you're only, I'm going to change things around. You only are responsible for assignment 10. You don't have to do assignment 11 yet. So we just got the review questions, all 10. I tell you what, just because I know that things are getting really crappy, I would like you guys to do from 5 to 10, right? So I want you to do from 5 to 10. You don't have to do the make work stuff in the beginning. I want you to do from 5 to 10. All right? So I'll make myself a note for that so I don't end up starting to rip off on you guys when you guys haven't done the first few questions. So open mic, any questions from you guys?
What if we already did chapter 10 and handed it in with everything done? Do we get extra points?
Oh, I was going to say I was going to deduct. No.
Yeah, I handed it in right before class because it was assigned for today. So.
Oh, was it? Because I'm trying to keep track of all these dates, man. It's crazy. Okay, so
it's rough. I missed a few tests just because of the whole no internet thing. So.
All right.
It's all good.
All right. So here's the deal. You will now be a better person because you did those questions. So it's its own reward, really, when you think about it.
That's all I ever look for in life.
So you said 5 through 10?
I said 5 through 10. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, those other ones are kind of warm ups to those questions. So that's why I was thinking save you guys a little bit of time because I'm sure the other courses are starting to heat up a little bit as everyone's frantically trying to catch up, I think. So, and I don't want you guys to basically, get blown away. So I think there's enough good stuff in those questions. But yeah, you'll be a much better person that you got it done. And thanks for telling me that.
Sweet.
I'll have to go look at it. Maybe we could take some of those,
It's all good.
move it to some future assignment, and then you don't have to do that. How about that? You could bank the points. All right. If there's nothing else, then open mic. I'll leave it open. I got a little bit of other stuff I got to get going here, and I'll stick around until the last person leaves. For goodness sakes, please don't stay logged on if you're not actually in the class. All right. So good deal, guys. Thank you, and we'll talk next week. And by then, I think everything should be caught up, and we'll talk about how we'll end this class or course. Thank you.
Yep. See you next week.
The hands-on assignment, 5 through 10. Is that what we have to do?
Yeah.
The questions.
Yeah, hands-on. Well, you do the
Okay.
review questions for sure. At the what page is that? They're on page what is it? 394. The review questions, and then basically hands-on is 5 through 10.
Okay.
I'll
Sounds good. Thanks.
Before I forget. Let's post that now because you will forget. Oh, and let's turn off the recording.